My entire family went to my sister's wedding in Hawaii without me. They didn't even tell me about it. I found out from beach photos they sent. When I asked why, my mom said, "We assumed you couldn't afford it." So I went silent for 1 year, built a multi-million-dollar company, and bought the exact resort they stayed at. They never saw it coming. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The cough was the first thing I registered. It was a dry, hacking sound that rattled my ribs and sent a spike of pain through my chest. I was on day 4 of the worst case of pneumonia I'd ever had, curled up under a mountain of blankets in my tiny studio apartment. The fever had broken, but it left me feeling like a wrung-out dish rag, weak and hollowed out. The gray afternoon light barely penetrated the blinds. My phone, which I'd ignored for days, buzzed weakly on the nightstand. I fumbled for it, my hand trembling. The screen lit up with a notification from a cousin I rarely spoke to. It was an image. I blinked, my vision swimming, and tapped it open. It was a group photo, bright and painfully cheerful. Palm trees, a white sand beach, and a turquoise ocean. And in the center, my entire family. My mother, Beatrice, beaming in a flowy linen dress, my father looking uncomfortable but smiling. My aunts, uncles, cousins, and right in the middle, my younger sister, Georgia, looking radiant in a simple white dress, holding hands with her longtime boyfriend, Liam. They were all raising champagne glasses. My breath hitched. Another message notification popped up, this time from Georgia herself. I opened it. It was a selfie of her and Liam, sand on their noses, grinning. The caption read, "Just married, winking face." My thumb scrolled, numb, as more photos flooded in. Georgia in her dress by the ocean. The family at a long, candle-lit dinner. Beatrice and Georgia, arms linked, laughing. Then, a final photo from my sister. It was just her, holding a tropical drink with a caption that felt like a slap. "Thinking of you, wish you were here, winking face." The winking emoji. That stupid, taunting winking emoji. I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness and a violent coughing fit pushed me back down. My lungs burned. They were in Hawaii. My sister got married in Hawaii. My whole family was there, and I was here alone, sick, in my 300-square-foot apartment. I hadn't received an invitation, a text, a phone call, nothing. My mind raced back, trying to find a clue. Had I missed something? We weren't fighting. Things were normal, or as normal as they ever were. Normal meant my mother Beatrice doting on Georgia, the lifestyle blogger, and her wealthy, old-money fiancé, Liam. Normal meant me Abigail, the practical daughter, the quiet data analyst, being treated as a reliable, boring background fixture. I stared at the photo of my mother, her arm draped protectively around Georgia. I had spoken to Beatrice just last week. I'd told her I was feeling sick. She'd cut the call short, saying she was in the middle of a huge showing, but had promised to call back. She never did. I scrolled through my call log. Nothing, my texts, nothing. The silence in my apartment was deafening, broken only by the drip of the leaky faucet and the wheeze in my own chest. They hadn't just forgotten me. This wasn't an oversight. This was a choice, a deliberate, calculated exclusion. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made. The holidays I worked so my father could take time off. The thousands of dollars I'd loaned Georgia. Loaned being a generous term for her blogging equipment, her car repairs, her rent. The way I'd proofread every one of my mother's real estate listings, using my data skills to help her target clients, never asking for a cent. And they were in Hawaii. The phone buzzed again. It was a text from Beatrice. My heart leaped, thinking, finally an explanation, a mistake, an apology. I opened it. "Honey, just saw you liked your cousin's photo. We're having a marvelous time, so sorry you're sick. We'll bring you back a souvenir." The casual cruelty of it, the breezy dismissal, was more painful than a direct insult. It was then that the weakness, the fever, the dizziness, all evaporated, replaced by a sudden, glacial cold. My hands stopped shaking. My breathing evened out. I knew in that instant that I was done. I was done being the reliable one. I was done being the afterthought. I was done being the person they assumed would just understand. I took a sip of stale water from the glass by my bed. My throat was raw, but my mind was perfectly clear. I wasn't just sick anymore. I was angry, and the betrayal was infinitely worse than the diagnosis itself. It took another 3 days for the antibiotics to fully kick in. 3 days. F me stewing in a toxic brew of humiliation and rage. The photos kept coming, popping up on my social media feeds. The happy couple snorkeling, the family on a catamaran, my mother posting about the most beautiful wedding for my most beautiful girl. Each post was a fresh twist of the knife. I didn't like any more of them. I didn't comment, I just watched. By the time I was strong enough to sit at my small desk without the room spinning, I had made a decision. I needed to hear it from her. I needed the final, definitive proof that this was as cold as it felt. I dialed my mother's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to her breezy, professional voicemail. "You've reached Beatrice. I'm either closing a deal or on a beach. Leave a message." I hung up and dialed again, and again. On the 5th try, she picked up, her voice annoyed. "Abigail, what is it? I'm in the middle of a toast." "You're in Hawaii," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of the emotion that was choking me. "Yes, of course," she said, a new, bright falseness in her tone. "It was all very last minute. Liam's family decided to fly everyone out. It was just a whirlwind." "Last minute," I repeated. "The custom dresses, the 5-star resort, the 24 family members, all last minute." There was a pause. I could hear the clinking of glasses and a faint strain of ukulele music. "Well," she huffed, "it wasn't that last minute. We've been planning it for a few months, but it was just complicated." "Why wasn't I invited, Mom?" The line went silent for a beat. I heard her sigh, a sound of pure exasperation, as if I were a toddler throwing a tantrum. "Oh, honey, don't be like that, please." "Like what?" "Like the daughter who wasn't invited to her only sister's wedding." "Abigail, be reasonable," she said, her voice dropping to the cold, dismissive tone she used when I disappointed her. "We knew you couldn't come. You just started that new analyst job, you never have any savings. That resort. It was terribly expensive. We assumed you couldn't afford it anyway. We didn't want to make you feel bad by sending you an invitation you just have to decline." There it was, the assumption, the pity, the casual confirmation that in their eyes I was small. I was the poor, practical daughter who couldn't possibly hang with their new, wealthy lifestyle. They didn't exclude me to be cruel. They excluded me because, in their minds, I simply didn't belong in their world. It was a simple data entry error. Abigail. Status, insufficient. A strange calm washed over me. The anger didn't disappear, but it crystallized. It turned from a hot, messy emotion into something cold, hard, and sharp, like a diamond. I took a deep breath. "You're right, Mom." Her voice instantly brightened, relieved. "See? I knew you'd understand. You're always so practical, Abigail. That's what I love about you. Now I have to run. Liam's father is making a speech. We'll see you when we get back." She hung up before I could say another word. I sat there, staring at the phone. "You're right." The words echoed in the empty room. They thought I was practical. They thought I was poor. They thought I was a non-factor. A slow smile spread across my face. It felt foreign. "I am practical," I whispered to the empty apartment. "And you're right, I can't afford it." I looked at my laptop, at the data analytics platform I'd been designing in my spare time, a project I'd been too nervous to show anyone. An idea I'd told myself was too big, too ambitious. They assumed, it became my new mantra. They assumed I was weak. They assumed I was poor. They assumed I'd just roll over and accept the scraps they threw me. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten what I actually do for a living. I don't just look at numbers. I find patterns. I see what's hidden. And I build models that predict the future. And I had just predicted my own. I picked up my phone and opened my contact list. I scrolled past father, Georgia, and mother and stopped on a name I hadn't contacted in months. Oscar, my old mentor. I didn't delete my family's numbers. I didn't block them. I did something far more permanent. I simply archived their conversations. I muted their notifications. In the digital world and in mine, they no longer existed. The silence was absolute, and in that silence, I began to work. My mother, Beatrice, wasn't always the monster she'd become. Or maybe she was, and I'd just been too young or too useful to see it. When I was growing up, she was a struggling real estate agent. I was her little helper. From the age of 12, I was the one stuffing envelopes, making spreadsheets of her contacts, and eventually building her first website. I was the one who taught myself data analysis to figure out which zip codes had the highest turnover, giving her an edge. I was practical Abigail, her little genius. Georgia, on the other hand, was her little star. She was pretty, charming, and knew how to work a room even at age 9. While I was coding, Georgia was at auditions for local commercials. While I was winning math competitions, Georgia was winning beauty pageants. Beatrice poured every spare dollar into Georgia's dance classes, her wardrobe, her portfolio. My achievements got a pat on the head, Georgia's got a party. I never truly resented Georgia for it. It was just the way things were. I loved my sister and I loved my mom. I told myself that my mother leaned on me because I was the strong one, the capable one. I wore her reliance on me as a badge of honor. When Georgia needed money for a new laptop to build her brand, I gave her my savings. When Beatrice needed a down payment for a better car to impress clients, I co-signed the loan. I was the family's bedrock, the foundation. And like all foundations, I was invisible, buried under the much prettier structure they'd built on top of me. The shift happened when Georgia met Liam. Liam wasn't just wealthy, he was rich. His family's name was on buildings. Suddenly, Beatrice wasn't just a local agent, she was the mother of the woman dating that Liam. Her entire demeanor changed. She started dressing in designer labels I'd never heard of. She stopped asking for my help with her listings. She'd hired a consultant. She spoke exclusively about brands and optics and synergy. Beatrice was the one who pushed the lifestyle blogger angle on Georgia, securing her sister's future by tying her to Liam's. And Beatrice was the one who, I now realized, had masterfully and systematically edged me out of the picture. I didn't fit the brand. My quiet competence, my sensible car, my tiny apartment, it was all an embarrassment to her. The wedding wasn't just a wedding, it was Beatrice's coronation as part of the elite. And I, the ghost of her middle-class past, had no place in the royal court. My phone call with Oscar was short and to the point. Oscar was a venture capitalist, a brilliant, no-nonsense man who had mentored me during a college internship. He'd always told me I had a billion-dollar brain and to call him when I was done working for idiots. Oscar, I said, my voice still rough from the pneumonia. It's Abigail. Are you still interested in that predictive analytics platform I sketched out last year? The one for real estate and market trends? I heard him lean back in his chair. The one you said you were too scared to build? What changed? I'm not scared anymore. Be in my office on Monday. Don't bring a resume, bring a business plan. I spent the next 48 hours in a feverish haze, not from illness but from purpose. I didn't sleep. I survived on coffee and toast. I took the scattered notes I'd been doodling for 2 years and forged them into a weapon. A 50-page business plan, complete with market analysis, scalability models, and 5-year projections. It was the best work I had ever done. When I walked into Oscar's glass-walled office that Monday, I was pale and 20 pounds lighter from the illness, but I felt like a giant. I didn't apologize for my appearance. I didn't make small talk. I just opened my laptop. For an hour, I spoke. I laid out the architecture, the data streams, the proprietary algorithm that could predict housing market shifts 6 months in advance with 95% accuracy. I explained how it could be used for everything from urban planning to private equity. When I finished, Oscar was silent. He stared at the screen, then at me. This isn't a platform, Abigail, he said slowly. This is a crystal ball, Every investment firm, every bank, every major developer in the country will want this. Including, he added with a thin smile, Liam's father. I know, I said. This is going to take over your life. You'll have to quit your job. You'll work 100-hour weeks. It'll be brutal. Good, I said. He nodded, a new respect in his eyes. I'll have my lawyers draft the seed funding agreement. We'll co-found. I'll handle the board, you handle the product. Welcome to the deep end, kid. As I left his office, the sun hit my face. It was the first time I hadn't felt cold in a week. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Georgia. A photo of her and Liam on a plane, champagne glasses in hand. Heading home, can't wait to see you and tell you all about it. We brought you a t-shirt. I looked at the message, at the grinning face of my sister, who had stolen my savings and my family. I powered the phone off, not archived, off. I put it in my desk drawer when I got home and went to my laptop. I didn't turn that phone on again for 364 days. The next year wasn't a year, it was a blur. It was a montage of 3 a.m. coding sessions, boardrooms with skeptical investors, and the constant, thrumming exhaustion that comes from building something from absolute zero. I moved out of my studio and into a small, furnished corporate apartment. Oscar provided 2 blocks from our new office. I didn't own anything. I didn't see anyone. I lived, ate, and breathed my company, Echelon Analytics. My old life was gone. My new life was work. And it was exactly what I needed. Every line of code I wrote, every investor I won over, every milestone we hit. It wasn't just a business success. It was a brick in the fortress I was building around myself. The anger had long since burned away, leaving behind a pure, clean jet propulsion fuel of ambition. I didn't need to investigate my family. I knew who they were. But as my company grew, I hired a small team of data specialists, the best in the field. And one day, purely out of a detached sense of curiosity, I turned my own algorithm on my family. It wasn't an investigation. It was a data mining exercise. I fed it public records, social media APIs, and real estate databases. I wanted to see the brand they had built. The results were illuminating. My mother's career was a house of cards. She was leveraged to the hilt. Her listings were all tied to Liam's family's firm, and public records showed she was paying massive, consulting fees back to a shell company. She wasn't a partner. She was a high-class, commissioned employee, and a desperate one at that. Georgia's lifestyle blogger career was a complete fabrication, funded entirely by Liam. Her engagement numbers were artificially inflated. Her brand deals were with companies also owned by Liam's family. She wasn't an entrepreneur. She was a kept woman with a good Instagram filter. And Liam was the most interesting. He presented himself as an old money scion, but the data showed a different story. His personal finances were a mess. He had a history of failed startups, all quietly laid out by his father. He wasn't a savvy investor. He was a liability his father was trying to hide. The lavish Hawaiian wedding, I realized, hadn't been a gift. It had been a transaction, a merger. Beatrice had secured her daughter a wealthy husband, and in return, Liam's family got a supposedly beautiful, popular, and uncomplicated bride to polish their family values' image. I was the loose thread, the messy, poor relative who didn't fit the narrative. My exclusion wasn't just an emotional slight, it was a business decision. I closed the file. It was all I needed to see. They weren't just cruel, they were frauds. 6 months later, we were in final stage acquisition talks with a major tech conglomerate. They wanted our algorithm, and they were willing to pay. The number on the table was staggering. I was in a meeting with Oscar and a dozen lawyers when my new assistant, I had an assistant now, peeked in. Abigail, I'm sorry to interrupt, she whispered, but there's a woman in the lobby, a Beatrice. She says she's your mother. She's making a scene. I hadn't heard her name spoken aloud in almost a year. It felt like a word from a dead language. Tell her I'm in a meeting, I said, not looking up from the contract. I did, she said she'll wait, she brought your sister. A cold smile touched my lips, then let her wait. The meeting lasted another 3 hours. When I finally walked out, the lobby was empty, save for the receptionist. The women who were waiting, I asked. They left about an hour ago, Ms. Abigail, the receptionist said. The younger one was crying, the older one. She looked very angry. She said to tell you that this is not how you treat family. Thank you, Bate. I went back to my office and signed the final acquisition paper. The deal was done. I was, on paper, one of the wealthiest self-made women in the state. I opened my laptop and went to a website I hadn't visited in a long time. A real estate listing for a certain 5-star luxury resort in Hawaii. The one Liam's family had bragged about staying at. As it turned out, it was part of a portfolio being liquidated by a distressed asset fund. It was for sale. I picked up my phone and dialed my new private banker. I have a project for you, I said. I'm interested in purchasing a hotel. The acquisition of the resort was complex, handled through a series of shell corporations I'd set up with Oscar's help. Within 2 months, the Kaʻalani Resort was mine. The staff remained the same, the management company was the same. Nothing changed except the name on the deed, hidden deep in a file in a law office in Delaware. My family, of course, knew nothing of this. What they did know was that I was rich. The acquisition of Echelon Analytics had been in the business journals. My name, the one they hadn't bothered to put on a wedding invitation, was now attached to a 9-figure sum. The calls and texts started as a trickle, then became a flood. I'd finally turned my old phone back on just to see. Hundreds of messages. From Georgia, OMG ABBY, I heard, why didn't you tell us? We have to celebrate, call me. From my father, Abigail, your mother is very upset, you should call her. And from Beatrice, a dozen missed calls, followed by a text that was so perfectly her, I almost laughed. Abigail, darling, I've been trying to reach you. I have a simply marvelous investment property I think you'll adore. It's the perfect place for a woman of your new stature. Call me. We have so much to catch up on. I ignored them all. Instead, I was busy planning. I was planning a party. I sent out 200 invitations on thick, cream-colored cardstock. They were for the official launch of the Echelon Foundation, a new charitable fund I'd created to provide educational grants for women in tech. The event was to be held in 1 month. Location: the Kaʻalani Resort, Hawaii, all expenses paid for all guests. The guest list included my new board members, my old mentor Oscar, the CEO of the company that acquired me, tech journalists, and the first 20 recipients of the Echelon grant. Not a single member of my family was on the list. The week before the event, I was in my new office, a penthouse overlooking the city, when my assistant buzzed. Abigail, your mother is on line 1. She says it's an emergency. I sighed. Fine, put her through. Abigail, finally. Beatrice's voice was a strained, sugary performance. Darling, I've been calling and calling. You're impossible to reach. I've been busy, Beatrice, I said. The use of her first name, cold and sterile, stopped her. Beatrice, what? What's wrong with you? We heard the news. We're so proud. Georgia is just beside herself. We're planning a huge party for you. Don't bother, I said. I'm having my own. Oh, she said, her voice sharpening. We didn't hear about that. Where is it? Hawaii, at the Kaʻalani Resort, actually. You know it, I believe. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could picture her, clutching her phone, her perfectly manicured face frozen in a mask of outrage. You're having a party? In Hawaii? Without us? I'm launching my foundation, I said, studying a scratch on my desk. It's a business event. All my contacts will be there. Business? She shrieked, the veneer cracking wide open. I'm your mother. Georgia is your sister. How could you do this? After all we've done for you. After all the support we've given you. Support? I asked, and this time I did laugh. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. The support you gave me when I was sick with pneumonia. The support you gave me when you went to my sister's wedding and sent me beach photos. That was a misunderstanding, she sputtered. We've been trying to apologize for a year, you shut us out, we thought you couldn't afford it. Now that things are different, of course you're invited to our lives. Oh, I'm invited now, I said. How generous. But you see, my event is very exclusive, terribly expensive, and I just assumed you couldn't afford to be there. I didn't want to make you feel bad. I repeated her own words back to her, and the effect was electrifying. She didn't yell, she didn't threaten, she just deflated. Abigail, she whispered, a desperate, pathetic sound. Don't do this, your family, what will people think? You should have thought of that a year ago, I said. Don't call this office again. I hung up. I knew, however, that it wasn't over. My mother wouldn't be defeated by a phone call. She'd been humiliated and she would retaliate. They would show up. I was counting on it. I made one more call. This one was to the head of security at my resort. I'm sending you a file with 3 photos, I said. These individuals are not on the guest list for next week's event. If they appear on the property, they are to be detained at the gate, and I am to be notified immediately. Under no circumstances are they to be allowed near the main hall. Is that clear? Perfectly, Ms. Abigail, he replied. The flight to Hawaii was different this time. Instead of flying coach, I was on a private jet Oscar had chartered for the Foundation's board. As we descended over the lush, green mountains and the sparkling blue water, I felt no anger. No sadness. I just felt calm. It was the feeling of an equation being solved, of a final line of code compiling perfectly. I arrived at the Ka'alani 3 days before the event. It was even more beautiful than in the photos. Open-air lobbies, gardens, and a stunning view of the ocean. The general manager, a polished man named David, greeted me with a deep, respectful bow. Welcome, Ms. Abigail, he said. It is an honor to finally meet you in person. The owner's villa is prepared for you. As I settled in, my team handled the event preparations. I spent my time walking the grounds, familiarizing myself with the place I now owned. I stood on the exact stretch of beach where Georgia had taken her wedding photos, the place that had been the backdrop for my deepest humiliation. Now it was just property, an asset. The day of the launch, my phone, which I kept on for logistics, lit up. It was an unknown number, a local Hawaii area code. I answered. Abigail, oh, thank God. It was Georgia, and she was sobbing. Abby, please, you have to help us. We're here. We're at the resort, but the security guard won't let us in. He said our names aren't on the list. It's so humiliating. I sighed. Hello, Georgia, where is Mom? She's right here. She's yelling at the man. Abby, please, just tell them to let us in. Liam is here, too. We flew all this way. For you. You flew all this way for the party, Georgia. Not for me. That's not true, she cried, but her voice cracked with the lie. We miss you, We've been so worried, and Mom's not doing well, Abby, her business. It's all gone. Liam's father cut her off. They're getting divorced, Liam and me. I paused, the data I'd pulled. It wasn't a prediction, it was a spoiler. It had all come true. Liam's family found out he'd been losing a lot of money, she whispered, her voice thick with shame. And they looked into my blog. They said my engagement was fake. They said I was a fraud. They cut us both off. We have nothing, Abby. Mom lost her listings, and we're staying at a motel by the airport. Please, we just want to talk to you. The desperation was real. The house of cards had fallen. They hadn't come to celebrate, they'd come to beg. I looked out at the ocean. I saw the first of my guests arriving, the young women who were the recipients of my grants, their faces bright with awe and excitement. That was my family now. I'm sorry to hear that, Georgia, I said, and I meant it. I was sorry she was in pain, but I wasn't responsible for it. But you can't come in. This is a private event. No, Abigail, please, she shrieked. You don't understand. Mom told everyone we were coming. She told them you invited us. If we go back, we'll be ruined. Just let us come in. We'll smile, we'll take a picture. Please, Abby, I'm your sister. You were my sister when you got married on this beach and sent me a photo to mock me, I said, my voice as flat and calm as the sea. You were my sister when you took my savings and never paid me back. You were my sister when you stood by and let Mom tell me I wasn't good enough for your new, rich life. You made your choice, Georgia, and I've made mine. You. She was sobbing so hard she couldn't speak. This is not a debate, I said. You are not welcome here, go home. I hung up and immediately called security. They're at the front gate. My mother, my sister, and her husband. Call them a car, charge it to my account, and send them to the airport. If they refuse, have them escorted off the property for trespassing. I stood on my balcony and watched. 10 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up to the front gate. I saw 3 figures, tiny from my vantage point. I saw my mother, Beatrice, gesturing wildly. I saw Georgia double over, weeping. I saw Liam, standing apart from them, just staring at the resort, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The head of security, a large, imposing man, stepped forward. My mother raised a hand as if to slap him. He didn't flinch. He just spoke and she recoiled. Slowly defeated, they got into the car. As it drove away, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt nothing, just the quiet, clean finality of a problem being solved. The equation was balanced. The books were closed. I turned away from the balcony and went to get dressed for my party. The grand lanai of the resort was strung with thousands of white lights, twinkling against the deep purple of the twilight sky. An orchestra played softly. 200 guests, tech leaders, journalists, and the bright, hopeful faces of my foundation's scholars mingled, holding glasses of champagne. I stood on the small stage, my mentor Oscar by my side, preparing to give my speech. You look a decade younger, Abigail, Oscar said, smiling as he adjusted his tie. Peace agrees with you. It's not peace, Oscar, I said, smoothing the front of my silk dress. It's control. Well, whatever it is, he stopped. His eyes flicked to something over my shoulder. His smile vanished. Abigail, don't turn around, we have a problem. But I had already seen the reflection in the glass behind the stage. My mother. She hadn't gotten in the car. She must have slipped away, found a service entrance, or simply walked down the beach. She, Georgia, and Liam were standing at the edge of the lawn, just beyond the lights. Beatrice had fixed her hair, reapplied her lipstick. She looked frantic, but she was trying to project an air of authority. Georgia was a wreck, her face puffy and stained with tears. Liam just looked empty. How did they get in? I whispered to Oscar. They must have come from the beach. Security is moving in, he said, nodding toward 2 guards discreetly approaching from the S. But Beatrice saw them, and she went for broke. Abigail, she screamed. The music stopped. The chatter died. 200 of the most influential people in my industry turned to stare. Beatrice strode forward, dragging Georgia by the hand, with Liam trailing behind. She was acting. Her face was a mask of tearful joy and relief. Oh, darling, she cried, pushing past a startled guest. We're here, we finally made it. Our flight was a nightmare. Oh, I'm so proud of you. She lunged for the stage, arms open, aiming for a hug. I didn't move, I didn't flinch. I just held up one hand and she stopped dead, 2 feet away from me. The microphone in my other hand was live. Who are you? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire lawn. Beatrice froze, the smile wavered. What? Abigail, it's me. It's Mom, don't be silly, everyone is watching. I know, I said, my voice still calm, still amplified. And I don't know you, or that woman with you, or that man. Abigail, stop this, she hissed, her eyes darting around. She saw the journalists. She saw the cameras. This is your family, we're here to support you. Support me, I said, taking a step forward. That's interesting, because I don't recall this support a year ago, when I was sick with pneumonia, alone in my apartment. Where was my family then? I looked directly at Georgia, who flinched and started to cry. Oh, that's right, I continued, my voice resonating with cold, clear power. You were here, on this very beach. getting married, you Georgia, and you Liam, and you Beatrice, my mother, you were all here having a party. The crowd murmured. Oscar stood behind me, arms crossed, a silent guardian. A party I wasn't invited to, I said, because, as my mother so practically explained to me, she assumed I couldn't afford it. She didn't want to make me feel bad. Beatrice's face had gone from red to a ghostly white. You're lying, she stammered. That's not what happened. She's stressed. She's been working too hard. I am perfectly calm, I said. I'm a data analyst after all. I deal in facts. And the fact is, you excluded me. You wrote me off. You decided I didn't fit your brand. So I went and built my own. I gestured to the resort around us. This brand, in fact, welcome to my party, Beatrice, at my resort, the one I bought. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Beatrice looked as if I had physically struck her. You bought it, Georgia whispered, her voice full of a sudden, horrified understanding. I did, I said. I'm hosting this event for people who actually did support me, for my mentor, Oscar, who believed in me, for my new board who trusts me, and for these amazing women, I motioned to the grant recipients, who I am funding so they never, ever have to feel the way you made me feel. Small, poor, and worthless. Beatrice lunged, not for me, for the microphone. She's sick, she shrieked into it, her voice cracking. My daughter is sick, she needs help. But before she could say another word, Georgia, in a single, convulsive movement, broke free. She grabbed her mother's arm. No, Georgia screamed, her voice raw. Stop it, Mom, just stop, he's right, she's right. She turned to me, her face a mess of tears and mascara. She's right, Liam, it's all true. I sent the pictures, I did it, I was jealous. You were always the smart one, the one Dad, the one everyone respected. I just had him, she gestured at Liam. And Mom told me to, she said. She said we had to protect the brand and that you were a liability. The truth, raw and ugly, hung in the air. Liam just stared at the ground. Beatrice was silent, her mouth open, defeated not by me, but by her own daughter. Abby, Georgia sobbed, taking a half-step toward me. I'm so sorry, we have nothing, Mom is. I looked at her, the sister I had once loved, the mother I had once idolized, the man who had been part of it. They were pathetic, broken, frauds exposed. I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel pity, I just felt done. I took the microphone back from Beatrice's limp hand. I turned to the two security guards, who were now standing right beside the stage. Please, I said, my voice calm again, escort these trespassers off my property. They are not and will never be on the guest list. Beatrice didn't fight, she was hollowed out. As the guards gently took her arms, she looked at me, her eyes empty. Georgia just wept. As they were led away, walking the long, quiet path off the lawn, a complete silence fell over the party. I turned back to my guests. I took a deep breath. Well, I said into the microphone, a small, real smile finally touching my lips. As I was saying, welcome to the launch of the Echelon Foundation. My name is Abigail, and we have a lot of good work to do. The crowd was silent for one more second, and then they erupt. Ed in applause. The party was a massive success. The journalists who witnessed the showdown wrote not about the family drama, but about the power of my speech and the incredible mission of the foundation. The story of my trespassers became a quiet footnote, a testament to my control and decisiveness. My foundation was launched with a wave of positive press and a surge of new donations. The next morning, I had a final meeting with the resort manager. The three individuals from last night, David, I said, sipping my coffee, they are permanently banned from this property, a lifetime trespass. Is that clear? Perfectly, Ms. Abigail, he said. And, I added, I've had my lawyers review your vendor contracts. The shell company my mother was using to consult for Liam's family, it appears they also have contracts with several other properties in your management group, based on fraudulent credentials. David's eyes widened. I was not aware. I'm sure you weren't, I said, sliding a file across the table. Here is the data. I trust you and your parent company will know what to do with it. He opened the file, scanned the first page, and paled. My mother's web of deceit, her entire house of cards, was now in the hands of the very people she'd been defrauding. It wasn't just about my party. It was about justice. Beatrice wouldn't just be socially ruined. She would be facing legal trouble, and she'd be finished in the real estate world for good. I left Hawaii that afternoon. I didn't hear from my family. The silence I had initiated a year ago was now a permanent, shared reality. A few months later, Oscar forwarded me a local news article. Beatrice had been charged with multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. The article mentioned she was destitute and being represented by a public defender. Liam, it noted, had filed for divorce from Georgia and moved to Singapore to avoid his own family's legal fallout. And Georgia, I found out about her from a message I received on a professional networking site. It was from a temp agency. Ms. Abigail, apologies for the out of office message, but I saw your profile. I am a huge admirer of your work with the Echelon Foundation. My name is Georgia, and I am currently seeking an entry-level position in data entry or administrative support. I know I don't have the experience, but I am a very fast learner. I am willing to do whatever it takes. I looked at her profile. The lifestyle blogger was gone. The photos were professional, simple. Her experience was listed as brand management, but there was a year-long gap. I thought about replying. I thought about offering her a hand, a small, anonymous grant. Then I thought about the girl on the beach, winking. I thought about the girl who called me a liability. I closed the message. I did not reply. My life moved forward. The foundation flourished, opening 2 new chapters. My work continued to challenge and fulfill me. I was surrounded by people who respected me, by colleagues who valued my mind, and by the young women I was helping who saw me as an inspiration. One evening, I was at a gala for the foundation. Oscar and I were celebrating a new milestone. To Abigail, he said, raising his glass, the woman who builds empires. To us, Oscar, I replied, clinking his glass, to building things that last. I looked out over the crowded room, at all the lives I had changed, at the good I had put into the world. The anger was gone. The hurt was a distant scar, a pale, white line that no longer pained me. My mother was right about one thing all those years ago. I was practical. I had taken the broken pieces of my past and used them as the foundation for my future. I had been told I couldn't afford their life. The truth was, they could never afford mine. And I was finally, completely at peace.